Welcome to Startup Confidential, what industry insiders will never tell you that you need to know if you're building a consumer brand. With your host, best-selling author of Ramping Your Brand, Dr. James Richardson. Let's do this.
Welcome to episode 146, Why Saying No is the critical founder skill. You might think saying no is the luxury of an established business who has the privilege to turn down any opportunity that isn't just dead on perfect. But you'd be wrong. Dead wrong. Saying no is one of the fundamental business skills never taught in any school, let alone in business school. If anything, American business schools teach you how to seek and chase opportunities to say yes. In many cases, founders can only learn the power of no by first uncritically accepting a growth opportunity or other deal that appears out of the blue. It comes to you. Emotionally caving to that opportunity without consulting a rational plan because you never made one, and then suffering the consequences of your winging it. This may already have happened to you, and I'm sorry. Don't worry, though, you're not alone. Sometimes, look, the need for cash is just too great and you cave, and you've probably learned from it. If not, this episode will ensure that you do learn how to say no to all bad opportunities once you learn to recognize them. For CPG startups, the art of saying no becomes necessary as soon as you advertise your existence publicly. You will become digitally swamped with offers, pitches, etc. from service providers just for starting your business. There's an army of small businesses and folks, and a few large ones like Intuit, that make all their money among the constant churn of sub $500,000 a year startups. This is, after all, where 80 to 90% of brands can be found in any CPG category. It's easy for most of you to say no to people who just want your money and aren't really offering an immediate return, especially if you have very little seed money or working capital. Digital marketing agencies, accountants, PR agents, PR platforms, pay-to-play events with supposed exposure for your brand, trade shows looking for you to sell at booths before you're ready, even creepy PR agents claiming to work for Martha Stewart. Seriously, that happened to one of my clients. Martha, what are you doing? It is much harder to say no to short-term, high-interest loan outfits, to fund that next inventory run, Amazon agencies, sales consultants, individual brokers claiming to have key contacts. All of those folks, they do promise quick results. If they are what they say they are and know what the hell they're doing. Basically, though, any individual offering any kind of service, totally unsolicited by you, is almost always an excuse to practice no. At least initially, so you can do your own research and step back from an emotional decision. Agencies who don't know anything about your needs but are already pitching social media? How does this make any sense? Chances are your LinkedIn message box has already had many unsolicited pitches from all manner of folks offering things you didn't even realize were things, let alone things that one needs to pay for. So be very skeptical when folks approach you when you're small. It is, in fact, your smallness which is the primary attractor. You're new and you're low status, and so are they. So they feel comfortable coming to you. Look, it's also easy to be flattered when you're this vulnerable and someone strokes your ego to get your attention. Hey, someone's paying attention to me. Above all else, you have to say no to the urge to seek external validation from anything else but the market, especially from service providers. This should be relatively easy to detach from, so please practice saying no. If you can't learn how to say no politely to these kinds of service providers, you will have big problems later on. So this is rehearsal for much more stressful no's that are going to come in your future. So you got to put some energy into this rehearsal. These, saying no to dozens of cold pitches is your rehearsal for graciously declining an opportunity later in your business journey, one that you probably sought out, but which you now know is a dangerous opportunity despite your desperate desire that it be a good one. Okay, so let's now segue to the critical genre of no that you must learn to deploy. You'll notice that with very few exceptions, you won't initially find retailers coming to your charming startup at all, unless you're standing at a trade show booth that they can easily walk by. Why is this? Well, they are the keys to the CPG revenue kingdom, and they know it. They are the highest status actors in the ecosystem, even higher than investors. Yes, they do hunt for interesting emerging brands, but not that hard. That's why they go to Expo West. They generally do not need to find suppliers, okay? Only the shittiest retail outlets have a hard time filling their shelves, mainly because they're overbuilt in square footage and operate in rural areas with non-competitive pricing. Now, although some of those retailers I just mentioned were overskewed up until recently in tiny brands just to obtain slotting fees or fill in empty space for political reasons. And they may actually be hunting a lot this year because so many businesses have wound down. So be careful. What a lot of people do not seem to realize is that poorly functioning retailers routinely call up distributors like UNFI and KeHE to have their sales reps source them some slot-filling emerging brand that does not know any better. These are generally the least productive banners in terms of ACV, with low foot traffic compared to major suburbs. Because retailers are very hard to say no to early on when you need a cash flow, you need to generate as many retail account leads as you can afford to do, because it's the key leverage you need to say no confidently. Choice. Not now. Not quite the right time. Not ready. Or no. All these phrases and their variations accomplish the same outcome. They shoo away the predators and the vultures and the douchekanists who rely on a constant influx of new startups to make money. No also establishes your representation as a thoughtful, serious player in an ocean of goofballs. Saying no keeps you focused on following a plan that you made, not succumbing to the whims of others with some near-term desire to accomplish something for their own interest or to make money off your small existence. Saying no to retail accounts that you sought out, but which you now know are inappropriate due to the nature of their shopper base, your inability to grow awareness and drive shelf velocity in the geography, or simply due to your need to preserve inventory for faster-moving accounts you already have, is preparation. It's a tough set of no's, right? It's preparation, though, for a much more important no. Saying no to a bad faith investor. Regulators traditionally assume that only well-connected rich men, surrounded by attorneys, raise millions from strangers. Hence, private capital fundraising is barely regulated. And until the 1990s, this was largely true, so who cares? But then private equity started exploding as an investment vehicle for Wall Street. And today, they have trillions to deploy in any given year. And they have a time clock to deploy that money so they can get very aggressive. And institutional investors of all kinds, they don't have a real incentive to be super transparent with newbies about the rules of the game. I mean, why give away all the tricks? If they were super honest, it wouldn't look that desirable to anybody. In fact, it would drag out the term sheet iteration process with new founders, for whom every divulged secret would cause people to go, what? It's not good for deal flow. For example, no investor goes into a deal intending to earn, less than the founder when all is said and done, because it doesn't benefit their LPs on Wall Street to allow that to happen. This is how you get things like liquidation preferences that minimize the downside for lead investors, as the founder and employee equity could potentially shrink quite a lot or even disappear with subsequent funding rounds. Now, none of this is going to be laid out for you in some sort of mortgage, federally regulated mortgage warning agreement. Institutional investors are hell-bent on earning far more than you on any exit deal, and generally they always do. You're not necessarily going to stop that. Because if deals aren't mostly weighted to their advantage, they don't sign. Now, you can still earn millions on an exit, but the latter is generally an exception. So you got to understand, when an investor is actually going even farther than that to become a true bad faith architect of term sheets in which there's 100 ways to dilute your equity and take away your control. In a way, investors are like retailers who make far more money per unit than you ever will. And that's the privilege that they lord over you in return for getting your brand in front of millions of eyeballs every week in their stores. So it's very hard to say no to either limited opportunities at retail or from external investors willing to put large amounts of money into your business. But this cannot prevent you from saying no when a deal works against your strategy or your long-term financial interest as you have defined it. So that's all I've got for this episode, folks. And remember, as always, be safe out there.
Thanks for listening. Remember, Dr. Richardson has loads of resources for founders at premiumgrowthsolutions.com. And when you're on his site, don't forget to take his founders quiz and see if you're ready to ride the skate ramp of exponential growth.